The morning after Christmas, my daughter-in-law stood in a hot, noisy kitchen, wearing a cheap white apron and rubber gloves. Her hair was tied back, her makeup was gone, and her hands were deep in a sink full of dirty plates. She was now the new dishwasher at my company's hotel. Just 12 hours earlier, at that same hotel, she had pointed at me, in front of the whole family and a room full of guests, and shouted, "Security, get this old useless woman away from our table." 2 big guards walked toward me. People stopped eating. The music went quiet. My own son stared at his plate. And my daughter-in-law, Emma, sat there smirking like a queen. She had no idea the woman she was throwing out owned the entire place, including the company she worked for. As the guards reached for my chair, I slowly stood up, looked straight at her, and said very calmly, "Emma, my dear, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Her smile faded. The guards looked from her to me, unsure what to do. The whole hall went silent. Forks froze in mid-air. My son's face went pale. Everyone was waiting for my next words. I leaned forward, rested my hands on the table, and opened my mouth to tell them who I really was. But before I tell you what happened next at that Christmas dinner, let me take you back to how we got there in the first place. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Grandma Maggie. I am 68 years old. I walk a little slower now, and my hair is more white than black, but my mind is as sharp as a new knife. I started my company when I was only 24. I was a young widow with a baby boy and no money. I washed clothes for people, cooked food, and cleaned houses, just to save enough to rent a tiny shop. From that small shop, I built a catering business. From catering, I moved into events. Then I bought an old building and turned it into a hotel. One hotel became 2, then 3. After 40 years of work, I owned a chain of hotels and event centers. But I never bragged about it. I still wore simple clothes. I still took the bus sometimes. Even my own staff often thought I was just an older guest. I liked it that way. People show who they really are when they think you are nobody. My son, Daniel, grew up while I was building all of this. I tried to give him what I never had: good school, nice clothes, a safe home. Maybe I spoiled him too much. He became soft, always wanting the easy way, always trusting the wrong people. Then he brought Emma home. She was beautiful, I will not lie. Tall, slim, with straight hair, perfect makeup, and a smile that looked sweet until you watched her eyes. Her eyes were always busy, always measuring people, what they wore, what they drove, how much money they might have. The first day she visited, I made them jollof rice and chicken. I placed the food on the table with my best plates. "Thank you, Mum," Daniel said. Emma looked at the plate and frowned. "Is there no grilled salmon?" she asked. "I am watching my weight." Her voice sounded like she was already tired of me. I laughed a little and said, "My dear, this is what we have today. You can eat the chicken without the skin." She rolled her eyes. Very small, but I saw it. She thought I was too old to notice. As time passed, she showed more of herself. When she discovered I lived in a small, old house, she started talking to me like I was a burden. She would complain, "Daniel, your mother needs to move to a care home. This house is too much for her. We cannot be coming here all the time." She did not know that I had refused to move into any of my hotels. I loved my small house. It reminded me of where I started, and it kept my feet on the ground. I later found out she worked as a supervisor in the restaurant of one of my hotels. But she believed the company belonged to some old white man investor that she had never seen. That made me smile. I was the invisible, old investor she talked about. I tested her many times. Once, I went to her restaurant and sat at a corner table, wearing a simple dress and an old coat. I watched her shout at the waiters. "Move faster," she snapped. "Our rich clients do not want to wait. And keep people like her at the back tables." She said, "People like her," while pointing at an older woman with worn shoes and a plain bag. That day, I knew everything I needed to know about her heart. When Daniel told me they wanted to host the family Christmas dinner at his wife's hotel this year, I agreed quietly. "That would be nice," I said. Christmas at Emma's hotel. If only they knew whose name was actually on the building papers. So Christmas came. I wore my best green dress and my simple black shoes. I even put on the small gold necklace my late husband gave me. I arrived early and sat at the end of the long table. Slowly, the room filled up with family, friends, and some of Emma's fancy work friends. The tree sparkled. The band played soft carols. Staff walked around serving drinks. When Emma walked in, she looked at me as if I was a stranger who had wandered in from the street. "Why is she sitting here?" she whispered to Daniel, but loud enough for me to hear. "She is my mother," he said, but his voice was weak. Emma turned to the closest waiter. "Call security." The next minutes felt like a movie. The guards walked over. People stared. My own grandson hid his face. Emma lifted her chin and said loudly, "Get this old useless woman away from our table. I do not want her near my guests." The guard stopped beside me. My chair scraped the floor as I stood. My heart was beating, but my face was calm. I rested both hands on the table, looked around at all their shocked faces, and smiled at Emma. "Sit down," I said to the guards. "You are about to learn who really owns this place." The guards froze. Emma's eyes widened. Daniel whispered, "Mum, what are you talking about?" Everyone stared at me, waiting. Because in the next few seconds, one sentence from my mouth was going to turn Emma's perfect Christmas into a nightmare. Everyone at the table stared at me like I had suddenly grown wings. Emma's fork slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. The guards looked confused and stepped back a little. My son, Daniel, swallowed hard and leaned closer. "Mum, what do you mean?" he whispered, his voice shaking. I kept my eyes on Emma. Her confidence was melting. Her lips trembled. She kept glancing toward her friends, hoping someone would laugh and say it was a joke. Nobody did. In that moment, I could have shouted the truth. I could have embarrassed her in front of everyone. But I didn't. I wanted her to understand who she truly was without the bright lights and the fancy clothes. I took a slow breath and said, "This didn't start today. Let me tell you all what led to this moment." Everyone leaned in. Even the guards stayed close, pretending to adjust their collars but watching me with curiosity. I went back to the beginning, to where everything really started going wrong, months before Christmas. It began one rainy afternoon when I got a call from one of my hotel managers. He said there was a problem with the restaurant staff, and he wanted me to visit quietly, without telling anyone. He didn't know Emma was my daughter-in-law. He only knew her as a troublesome supervisor. I left my house that same evening wearing my old brown coat, my head tie, and my rubber slippers. I wanted to see things exactly how they were. When I arrived, the lobby was warm and bright. Guests walked around happily. But as soon as I stepped into the restaurant, I heard shouting. "Do you people have sense at all?" Emma yelled at a young waiter. "Are you trying to embarrass me? Move faster." The boy looked terrified. His hands were shaking so badly that the tray almost fell. Emma snatched the plates from him, hissed loudly, and told him to get out of her sight. I watched from the corner. Nobody noticed me. I looked like an ordinary old guest. Then Emma walked to the cashier and slapped a file on the counter. "If we keep useless people like that, our rating will drop," she said. "And I will not let anyone destroy my restaurant." The cashier nodded nervously. Another staff member tried to speak, but Emma waved her hand at him like he was an annoying fly. I had seen enough. I turned around quietly and headed toward the exit, but before I reached the door, I heard Emma call out, "You, old woman." I stopped. Slowly, I turned around. She was pointing at me. "Are you going to stand there like a statue?" she snapped. "If you want a table, go and sit at the back. This section is for our premium guests." Several people were watching. Some giggled. Some looked embarrassed for me. I smiled gently. "Thank you, my dear. I'll sit anywhere." She muttered something under her breath and walked away without another glance at me. That day, I decided I would watch her closely. I didn't want to judge her based on one bad mood. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was having a hard day. I believed in giving second chances. But over the next few weeks, I visited unexpectedly several times. Each time, I saw the same behavior. She treated older women like they were invisible. She talked to workers like they were trash. She only smiled when a rich guest walked in. Workers feared her. Guests complained quietly. But Emma always blamed everyone else. The more I watched, the more I realized something painful. She wasn't just mean. She loved power. She loved to control. And she loved to embarrass anyone she thought was weaker. One evening, I saw her scolding a cleaner who had spilled a little water while mopping. "Do you think I'm paying you to decorate the floor with puddles?" she shouted. The cleaner apologized and bent down to wipe it quickly, but Emma pushed the mop broom aside and walked away. I felt anger burning inside me, but I kept calm. I wanted to see how far she would go. Then something even worse happened. One afternoon, I watched her throw away leftover food instead of giving it to the staff, even though it was company policy that workers could have the leftovers after guests had been served. "It's my rule," she said. "If they want food, they should buy it." That day, even the manager wanted to report her, but before he could, Emma threatened him. "If you write anything against me, I'll make sure you regret it." She didn't know she was threatening the manager of my hotel. I finally understood that Emma wasn't just rude. She was dangerous. If someone like her ever believed she had real power, she would destroy everything around her. And yet, Daniel loved her blindly. Whenever I tried to warn him, he said, "Mum, you just don't understand her. Emma is strong. She is hardworking." Yes, hardworking at insulting people. Still, I remained quiet. I knew there would be a day when her true character would show itself so clearly that nobody could deny it. That day came on Christmas. But the real fire started the moment she saw me sitting at the family table like I belonged there. Her eyes turned cold immediately. She whispered to her friend, "Why is she here? I don't want her beside my guests. Let her sit somewhere else." I stayed where I was. Calm, silent, watching her. Then she snapped her fingers at a waiter and said the words that still ring in my ears. "Call security. I don't want that old useless woman near my table." People gasped. Someone dropped a spoon. Someone else covered their mouth. The guards came. And that is when I stood up, placed my hands on the table, and said loudly, "You are about to learn who really owns this place." Everyone froze. But before I could say another word, a loud crash suddenly burst through the hall. A waiter had dropped a full tray of drinks, and the glass shattered across the floor. Everyone screamed and jumped back. The whole room spun into chaos. The entire hall fell into panic as the tray hit the floor. Glass shattered everywhere. Drinks splashed across people's clothes. Guests jumped out of their seats. Children screamed. The band stopped playing instantly. It felt like a sudden storm had entered the room. The poor waiter who dropped the tray stood frozen, shaking like a leaf. His hands were trembling so hard he almost dropped the empty tray he still held. Emma's eyes lit up with anger. I had seen that fire before. She loved moments like this. Moments where she could show everyone that she was in charge. She pointed at the waiter and shouted, "Are you blind? Look at this mess. Who hired you? Are you a child?" Everyone turned to look at her. Even in all the noise, her voice cut through the room like a knife. The waiter tried to speak, but Emma didn't give him a chance. She grabbed him by the arm and pulled him forward roughly. "You're fired," she screamed. "I don't care if it's Christmas. Get out of my restaurant before I make things worse for you." The boy's eyes filled with tears. He looked barely 18. His lips shook as he tried to say something, but he couldn't speak. He just nodded and took a step backward. And that is when something inside me snapped. I pushed my chair back and marched toward them. At first, nobody noticed. There was too much noise. Too much confusion. But when I reached the center of the hall, I shouted one word. "Stop." My voice echoed through the hall like thunder. Everyone froze. Emma turned around slowly, her eyebrows raised, her face twisted with anger and confusion. "You," she said, pointing a finger at me again. "Why are you shouting? This is not your..." "Enough," I said. My voice was calm, steady, powerful. "Step away from that boy." Emma looked around for support, but for the first time since I met her, no one backed her up. Even her friends stayed silent. The guests had seen too much now. They couldn't pretend anymore. She scoffed and folded her arms. "Excuse me, who are you to tell me what to do in my restaurant?" The guard stepped closer again, unsure who to listen to. Daniel walked toward us slowly, looking like he wanted to disappear. "Mum, please, don't make this worse." Suddenly, Emma shouted again, "Security. Remove her now." The guards looked at one another. The taller one spoke softly to her. "Ma, she said she owns this place." Emma rolled her eyes dramatically. "She's lying. She's an old woman trying to feel important. Remove her before she embarrasses us." I shook my head slowly. "You have embarrassed yourself," I said. "But you are about to understand just how small you really are." Emma laughed loudly. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? You don't matter here. You don't even belong at this table." She stepped forward, her face inches from mine. "Old people like you should stay away when adults are talking." Those words cut through the hall. Guests gasped. One woman covered her mouth. Daniel looked like he wanted to faint. I didn't blink. I simply turned to the guards and said, "Call the general manager." Now. Emma laughed again. "The general manager. He works under me." But the guards obeyed. They picked up their radios and called for him. 2 minutes later, the general manager, Mr. Collins, rushed into the hall. His eyes widened when he saw the disaster, the glass on the floor, the frightened waiter, the angry guests, and Emma standing in front of me with her hands on her hips. "Good evening, Madam Margaret," he said, bowing slightly. The room went silent. Emma blinked rapidly. Margaret," she asked. "Who is that supposed to be?" "Mr. Collins cleared his throat. "Madam Margaret, the owner of this hotel." You could hear a pin drop. Emma's mouth fell open. Her hand shook. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like she might faint. I finally turned toward her fully. "Yes, Emma," I said softly. "You just screamed at the owner of the company you work for. The woman you called useless built this place from the ground up. Every chair, every table, every plate, every paycheck, comes from me." She took a step back. No, that can't be. Daniel, tell her she's lying." Daniel couldn't speak. He looked ashamed, confused, terrified, all at once. Emma's breathing became loud and fast. You watched me. All this time. You tricked me." "I watched you," I replied. "Because I wanted to see your true character. And you did not disappoint." She opened her mouth to argue but nothing came out. Then something unexpected happened. The frightened waiter she tried to fire took a step forward. He whispered, "Ma, please don't punish her too badly, it's Christmas." His kindness shocked everyone, even me. Emma glared at him, but she had lost all her power. I placed my hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "You will not be fired. You will return to work tomorrow. And you will get extra support and training." He nodded gratefully. Emma stood trembling. Her pride had cracked open. The perfect queen was falling apart. I didn't know," she whispered. "I know," I said. "That is the problem." Before she could say another word, someone burst through the back door of the hall, running, sweating, shouting loudly. Madam, there is an emergency in the kitchen." Everyone spun toward the voice. The man gasped for breath and shouted again. Something has gone terribly wrong. And that emergency was about to change everything even more. The kitchen door slammed against the wall as the young chef assistant rushed into the hall, panting hard. His white apron was stained with something dark, and sweat dripped down his forehead. Everyone turned toward him. The music was gone. Conversations had died. Even Emma stopped shaking long enough to stare. "What happened, Mr. Collins?" asked sharply. The young man pointed behind him, his finger trembling. "The fire alarm in the kitchen, it just went off. The oven caught fire. We can't stop it." Gasps filled the room. Several guests jumped to their feet. Staff ran toward the kitchen entrance, shouting instructions. Smoke began to creep out from under the door, thin but growing thicker by the second. I stepped back slowly. A kitchen fire, on Christmas night, the worst possible moment. The entire hall was in danger. Panic began spreading like wind through grass. Emma grabbed Daniel's arm. "Do something," she shouted. "They're going to ruin my night." Her voice sounded small now, not powerful, not confident. Just scared. But Daniel wasn't listening to her anymore. His eyes were on the smoke. "Mr. Collins," raised his voice, calm but firm. "Everyone, stay seated unless asked to move. We are handling it. Do not panic." But people were already panicking. Kids started crying. Chairs scraped the floor. Some guests tried to run toward the exit, bumping into each other. The scent of burning food filled the air, slowly rising. Emma clutched her chest dramatically. This is not happening. This is not my fault. I ignored her. Fires could spread fast. I had experienced something like this before, many years ago, when my first hotel's kitchen caught fire. I knew what to do. I turned to Mr. Collins. Shut down the power to the kitchen immediately. Then evacuate the side hall first. The fire won't reach there quickly. He nodded and rushed off to give orders. Staff began moving in organized lines, guiding people away from the smoke. But then something strange happened. As the smoke thickened, and the noise in the hall grew louder, Emma suddenly grabbed her designer handbag and tried to push past a group of guests to escape first. She elbowed a woman holding a baby, shoved an old man out of her way, and snapped at a waiter who begged her to calm down. My safety is more important. Get out of my way. She screamed. Her voice cracked with pure selfishness. The old man she pushed almost fell, and the baby in the woman's arms started crying louder. That was the moment people saw her fully, no more pretending, no more fake smiles. Just pure fear mixed with selfish pride. A guest shouted at her. Stop pushing people, but Emma shoved again, wild and desperate. I stepped in front of her. Enough, I said coldly. She froze like a child caught doing something terrible. Let the children and elderly go first, I said. You will move last. She shook her head. No, I'm not staying here to die because of these people. Move. And she tried to push me. That was the final straw. I grabbed her wrist, firmly, not painfully, and said, Emma, if you take one more selfish step, I will have security escort you out in handcuffs for endangering guests. She froze again. Her eyes darted around. Everyone was watching. She couldn't shout. She couldn't pretend. She couldn't hide. For the first time, she looked small, powerless, and completely exposed. The fire alarm continued ringing loudly. Staff rushed around. People coughed as smoke filled the air. But slowly, under Mr. Collins' supervision, the evacuation began to move smoothly. Children first. Elderly second. Families next. The back exit was opened, and cold air rushed in. I watched as one of the cooks came out covered in black soot, coughing loudly. The fire is growing, he said. We managed to close the oven door, but the flames are spreading to the cabinets. Mr. Collins signaled the fire extinguisher team. They ran in with equipment, determined to contain it before it reached the gas lines. Meanwhile, Emma stood frozen beside me, trembling. For once, she didn't try to argue. She didn't try to show power. She didn't try to pretend she was in charge. Are we going to die? She whispered. No, I said. Not if you stay calm and think of others, not yourself. She lowered her head. Her breathing became shaky, but she stayed in place, allowing others to go ahead. When the hall was almost empty, I guided her and Daniel toward the exit. Outside, guests gathered under the cold December sky, hugging their children, coughing out the smoke, and comforting each other. The flashing lights of the fire truck pulled into the hotel driveway. Firefighters ran inside. The night was filled with noise. Sirens, shouting, coughing, crying. But I stood quietly beside my son, watching the flames behind the kitchen window. Then, suddenly, a loud explosion burst from inside the building. People screamed. Firefighters ducked. And a cloud of fire shot upward from the kitchen roof. Emma covered her mouth, shaking uncontrollably. Daniel grabbed my arm. Mum, what was that? I stared at the burning building, my heart pounding. Because I knew exactly what part of the kitchen had exploded. And the truth behind that explosion was something that would expose Emma even more than the Christmas fiasco. Something she thought nobody would ever find out. Something she hoped would stay hidden forever. The explosion sent a bright burst of orange shooting into the night sky. Everyone screamed and backed away. Firefighters shouted orders as they rushed toward the kitchen entrance with more equipment. Daniel held my arm tightly. Mum, what just blew up? He asked, terrified. I didn't answer immediately. My eyes were fixed on the flames. I knew exactly which part of the kitchen had exploded. And I knew the reason behind it, a reason Emma would never want anyone to hear. Slowly, I turned toward her. Emma stood in the cold, shaking all over. Her hair was messy, her dress stained with smoke, and her eyes were huge with fear. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had ordered security to drag me away just hours earlier. She whispered, "This isn't my fault, right?" I didn't reply. Instead, I watched the firefighters run back and forth, shouting instructions. One of them came out coughing and shaking his head. "The fire started in the cleaning storage," he told Mr. Collins. "A can of industrial cleaner must have overheated. It's not supposed to be stored near heat." Mr. Collins frowned. "Impossible. We keep those items in the back storage room. Locked." The firefighter shook his head. "Well, someone moved them. Someone didn't follow safety rules. The cleaners exploded. That's what caused the blast." The crowd murmured. I slowly turned my gaze back to Emma. Her face dropped. She took a tiny step backward. "No, no, don't look at me. I didn't, I mean." But she did. I knew she did. 3 weeks earlier, she had ordered the cleaners to be moved closer to the oven to save time, even after the staff warned her it was dangerous. She wanted the kitchen to look tidy, for her Instagram videos. She didn't care about safety. She just wanted things her way. I stepped closer to her. "Emma," I said quietly, "I warned you about ignoring the rules." Her legs trembled. I forgot. I didn't know it would cause all this." "You didn't forget," I replied. "You dismissed everyone who tried to correct you." Guests around us turned to look at her. Staff whispered. Even the firefighters glanced in her direction. Emma began crying, wiping her face with shaky hands. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, I swear, please, don't let them blame me." Daniel stepped forward. "Emma, did you really move the chemicals?" She kept sobbing. "I just wanted the place to look nice. Why does everything always go wrong for me?" Daniel closed his eyes. He looked heartbroken. This was the woman he chose. And tonight, her true colors were impossible to hide. I touched his arm gently. "Son, this is who she is when no one is watching." He nodded slowly, tears forming. "I know, I see it now." Firefighters finally managed to control the flames. Smoke poured into the sky, but the fire no longer looked dangerous. People began calming down. Some sat on the ground, tired and shaken. Others hugged their children. Then Mr. Collins walked toward me. "Madam," he said politely, "what would you like us to do about the supervisor who caused this hazard?" Emma gasped loudly. "No, please, no, don't fire me. I need this job." I stared at her for a long time. This was the same woman who yelled at workers like they were trash. The same woman who tried to fire a young waiter on Christmas. The same woman who called me useless and tried to have me dragged away. And now she was begging. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel victory. I just felt tired. Tired of the cruelty she carried in her heart. "You will not be fired," I said finally. Emma looked shocked. I won't." "No," I continued. "You will not be fired." Before she could smile, I added. "You will be demoted to dishwasher. Effective tomorrow morning." The crowd murmured loudly. Her mouth dropped open. "Dishwasher. That's the lowest. That is where you will learn respect," I said firmly. "That is where you will learn humility. And that is where you will stay until your attitude changes." Daniel looked down at the ground. Her friends looked away. Emma's face turned red with shame, but she didn't argue. She knew she had no right to. She had brought herself to this place. The firefighters cleared the last bit of smoke. Guests began leaving. The once beautiful Christmas dinner had turned into a night everyone would remember for the rest of their lives. Daniel helped me into his car. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed. "Mum, I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I married someone I didn't truly understand." I touched his hand gently. "You will learn from this, my son. We all make mistakes." Emma sat alone on the curb, hugging herself against the cold, staring at the burnt windows. She looked small. She looked lost. But this time, she had no one to blame. The next morning, she showed up to work wearing a plain apron, her hair tied back, ready to wash dishes. The staff she once insulted walked past her quietly. Some felt pity. Some felt relief. But everyone felt the shift. And that was how the woman who tried to throw me out of my own Christmas dinner ended up in the dish room of the company she never knew I owned. In the end, the lesson was simple. Pride destroys more people than poverty ever will. Respect everyone, because you never know whose hands hold the doors you walk through. And as for me, I returned home, knowing justice didn't need revenge. It only needed truth.